Hello everyone, this is Jason Petruzzello, and I'm doing my video review for Victoria 2. As I said in my written review, Pops is one of the things that makes Victoria such a unique strategy game. But rather than waste 5,000 written words trying to explain Pops, I'm going to instead do this video review and podcast to sort of illustrate to you what Pops are and how they impact the game. We're going to examine France in 1841. The game starts in 1936, but I've played through it for a few years to sort of begin moving France in the direction that I as the player want it to go. As you can see, France is a great power. I have a substantial amount of prestige, a decent military score, and I've begun industrializing. But it's still early in the game, so I do not have a large colonial empire, and I have not begun adding a substantial number of countries to my sphere of influence. France has a decently sized population, and as you can see here, I've opened up the part of the interface that deals with France's pops. I've paused the video with the mouse hovering over a tooltip that shows the general population breakdown of the country. You can see already from this tooltip that the people in France are doing a wide variety of things. While there is natural population growth and immigration, you'll notice people are changing jobs. Certain kinds of people are either increasing in population or decreasing in population. But so far, we are just seeing a sort of broad breakdown of demographic data. These are not pops. This is just information to help you as the player play the game. Now I'm going to sort through the interface and bring up some of my pops. The actual individual groups of people that are running France. I'm looking through farmer pops right now. We're going to look at the farmers in a particular province. Looking at the data here in the interface, we can see that there are farmers in the province of Caen. We've got a lot of farmers there. You'll notice that they grow cotton. They are French in culture, are Catholic in their religion. They have a militancy rating, which measures how willing they are to go into revolt, and a consciousness rating, which represents how politically aware they are. Now, as you look at the tooltips, you'll see that various things affect militancy and consciousness. And these values of militancy and consciousness will, in turn, affect other aspects of gameplay. They also have ideologies and views on various political issues, which are illustrated by the little pie charts there. But what's most important to us right now is the fact that the pop also has an income, and it is spending its income on life needs, everyday needs, and luxury needs. Each pop also has a rebel affiliation if it's angry enough, and it has immigration data, and it has a literacy rate. Click on the pop for more detail. We can get a better breakdown on what the heck's going on with these farmers in the province of Caen. Now, looking at a more detailed breakdown of this particular pop, it seems that these farmers in Caen, who are growing cotton, mind you, are generally content with their life, but they make so little money that they are barely able to purchase their life needs. Life needs represent a pop's desire for basic things that keep it from starving to death. Everyday needs represent stuff that the pop wants to have to keep its current socioeconomic position, and luxury needs represent those things a pop wished it can afford. Now, Victoria 2 does not arbitrarily assign a standard of living to these pops, but the pops in question here in Caen are working at raising cotton, and because the price of cotton is very low right now due to a oversupply in the market, this pop is having difficulty buying anything other than just enough food to survive. And because Victoria's game engine is detailed enough to keep track of exactly how much money this one particular pop earns, and keeps track of how it spends that money for goods on the world market, you should be able to begin seeing just how complicated Victoria's economics model is. Because other pops in other professions in other parts of the country may be earning more or less money than these particular cotton farmers in this province. But pops are also not just static placeholders of population. If you watch the tooltips as I mouse over the icons sort of in the middle there, you'll see that the pops here in Caen are slowly changing their profession. Some are trying to promote to bureaucrats and move up into the middle class, while others are considering quitting their job as farmers and becoming soldiers. Tooltips demonstrate that economic forces are at work, and in this case, because soldiers are making a decent wage in my country, these farmers have every reason to want to change jobs. After all, they're not making that much money farming cotton. But farmers aren't the only pops living in Caen, and we're going to take a look at how the upper class is doing in that particular part of France. In this case, we're going to look at the aristocrats who live in that province. Just like the farmers, the aristocrats have a culture, a religion, a militancy, a consciousness, political views, ideological views, and an income. Now, because we can't be expecting aristocrats to go working in the cotton fields themselves, after all, they're rich people and aren't poor people, their income is going to be figured slightly different than the income of the farmers. But aristocrats get to benefit from all of the profits from resource gathering operations in the area where they live. Now, if you look at the graph here, you will see that the aristocrats as well are having difficulty meeting their needs because of the economic downturn in the province of Caen. Before you feel too sorry for those aristocrats, bear in mind that because they're very wealthy pops, they demand much more in the way of consumer goods than the poor farmers who are working out in the cotton fields. Just to even meet their life needs, they consume many times more consumer goods than the poor farmers do. This is not necessarily a bad thing, because both rich aristocrats and rich capitalists can help drive the economy by buying a lot more luxury goods than farmers and craftsmen can buy. But these aristocrats are beginning to turn into other kinds of pops, and in their case they're demoting down to the middle class. Some of them are turning into bureaucrats and officers in the army, but some are doing so badly they're even turning into farmers and moving way down on the social ladder. As the tooltip indicates, some are also moving to France's colonies, and some are just leaving the country altogether and taking their money with them. However, it's not all doom and gloom for the upper classes, because there are also capitalists living in Caen, and as you're going to see through the tooltips, the capitalists are doing quite well. The capitalists living there are able to meet their life, everyday, and luxury needs, and they're making money hand over fist in the new economy. Although they are not 100% happy in their lives, because even though they're making piles of money, France does not have some political reforms that the capitalists would like to see. Now, like aristocrats, capitalists don't get their hands dirty doing actual work, but they get a share of the profits of all factories in a particular region. Now, what I've shown you so far may not seem to be very compelling, but you've got to understand that every country in Victoria may have thousands upon thousands of individual pops. And Victoria plays day by day in the game. So every day the Victoria game engine updates everything all of these various pops are doing. What kind of employment they're involved with, how much money they're making, and what they are buying with their money. When you combine that with the pop's ideological and political views, you end up with a game that is much more complicated than the old standard, well, if I keep taxes low, the people will be happy routine. And even if you are not a benevolent autocrat towards your population, you have to take into consideration their economic welfare when you conduct both your foreign policy and your domestic policy. To give you an idea of how much things can change with your pops over the course of a few decades, I've loaded a saved game of France in 1904. Now you'll notice the French have a gigantic colonial empire in Africa because I've been very busy on the Dark Continent. And France now has one of the largest populations in the world. But that's only made the political and economic situation more complicated, because with more pops come more division in ideology, political issues, and economics. Looking at an overview of France's pops, you'll see that there is quite a bit of immigration from the country, but it is more than offset by my population growth. And if you look at the ideology and electoral pie charts, you're going to see that most of France now believes in socialism as an ideology. The reasons for this are very complicated and have to do with France's political history for the past 20 years of gameplay. You'll notice that a substantial portion of the country has both French culture and French religion. This may seem surprising because of the amount of African territory held by France, but part of what has been happening is under the citizenship policies of the ruling parties, we've been able to assimilate some of the people living in Africa into French culture and Catholic faith. But if you remember the aristocrats in Caen that we were looking at in the 1840s, we're now going to look at how they are doing here in the beginning of the 20th century. If you look at the data here for the pop, you'll notice that it's getting more of its needs than it was a couple of decades ago. But it's not like the price of cotton has jumped and suddenly there's been this windfall of cash for aristocrats and farmers in this part of the country. Also, aristocrats now have more things to spend their money on as technology has improved and given them more luxury products to purchase. As a result, even if the aristocrats were making twice as much money, they'd be spending more than that buying the new luxury goods available in the new economy. Now, if we look at the farmers in Con, we're going to notice that, first of all, a large migrant population has come to the province. These non-French and non-Catholic pops have come from other parts of France's colonial empire in search of work. If we take a look at the old-school French farmers that have lived there for God knows how many years, we'll notice that their situation in life has improved a little bit like the aristocrats. But, as with the aristocrats, there's more things for them to purchase these days, and it spreads their dollars thinner. We should also not be surprised that the vast majority of these farmers are socialist because of the fact that they cannot purchase all of their everyday goods. In addition to that, I, as the player, have been manipulating previous elections in order to encourage my pops to view the world in socialist terms. This becomes part of the delicate balancing act in Victoria, where pops cannot be just ordered to do things, but you need to manipulate them in clever ways in order to achieve desired political and economic results. Manipulation can take everything in the form of creative tax policies to using elections in order to influence public opinion. One major thing that has affected France's pops is that I managed to achieve a socio-political milestone a couple of decades ago. I managed to outlaw slavery. All of France's slave pops became laborers and farmers and now have actual jobs, rather than just being an exploited slave population on Caribbean plantations. Now, if we look at the capitalists who live there, you'll notice that, oh wait, there aren't any capitalists in Con anymore. Something happened in the intervening decades that caused the capitalists that live there to either turn into other pops or move away. Look at the other capitalists, though, you'll notice that they're making money hand over fist like they were before. Except now they can buy things like automobiles and airplanes and telephones, which were not available before. There are plenty of new luxury goods to soak up the extra income these capitalists have. It's a good thing they have extra income because they are also reinvesting their money in new factories and in new railroad infrastructure. Those knowledgeable in economics should take heart at those words because capitalists are not just merely rich people who sit around consuming luxury goods, but the capitalists take the money that they earn from the factories that they own and often will attempt to invest in new businesses or expand previous businesses. Of course, takes place within the restrictions of the government policy. Capitalists having an easier time doing business under laissez-faire policies and having virtually no ability to do anything under Soviet-style planned economies. Of course, letting the capitalists run the economy means letting them decide what factories they want to build, and that sometimes means they don't build factories that are very useful. They look more at their bottom line than at the idea that maybe you'd like to have a better defense industry, for example. Trying to decide upon an economic policy while at the same time balancing the needs and wants of your pops is what makes Victoria 2 such a complicated game to play. This video really only scratches the surface on how pops function in Victoria 2. I want to emphasize that they're even more complicated and they're tied to all kinds of other game mechanics, including soldiers and revolts and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I'd like to leave a parting comment before I go ahead and close out this video review. If what I've shown you looks like it would be a nightmare of micromanagement, I want to make clear that most of the ways that you manage your pops occur indirectly. Setting taxes and economic policies, making sure that your pops' political needs are met, are all done indirectly. You don't click through pops trying to make them do stuff. That's not how it works. This is a good thing because, as you can see, France has a ton of pops, and it would be an absolute nightmare to try and click through all of them and do things. And with that parting comment, I'd like to invite everyone to come to Adrenaline Vault and read the rest of the review on Victoria 2. Come on by and check it out, and I look forward to seeing you there.